Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this May 18, 2014 edition of Nightcast. Tonight, the opening story is a big flood in Serbia's River Sava. Emergency workers in Serbia are preparing for a flood wave on one of the country's main rivers.
Tens of thousands of Serbians have been affected by these once-in-a-century floods, and this town, just outside the capital Belgrade, has had it worse than most. The rescue teams here are working flat out to get to people. This is where the rescue efforts have been concentrated, in the town of Obrenovac, and as you can see, it's more or less completely submerged. Only a few people remain in their houses here, according to the authorities, but they're trying their best to get help to them nonetheless, although everybody says it would be much better if they just left. The conditions are appalling. 3 months' worth of rain fell on Obrenovac in 3 days. Those who've remained have been without power or fresh water. The emergency services are counting the holdouts. They know they're likely to find bodies when the waters finally recede. But some would rather stay in their homes in Obrenovac, even if basic supplies are hard to come by. The rescuers would say it's time to leave, and they wish that more would follow this old man's example.
Some people simply don't want to leave their homes. We are trying to convince them to leave, but it's very difficult.
The river levels here dropped slightly over the weekend, but they're likely to rise again as floodwater pours down the River Sava from neighbouring Bosnia. The situation there is at least as bad. Landslides have swept away houses and disturbed landmines left over from the conflict of the 1990s. Croatia's been suffering too. The Sava has flooded in the east, and even falling water levels may not prevent the riverbank collapsing in some places. Guy Delornay, BBC News, Obrenovac.
Thank you, Guy. And friends, we don't have any other video tonight because we have had some internet problems here. Well, combination, internet and equipment not wanting to sync up with the internet this afternoon for some reason. We hope to straighten that out, God willing, by tomorrow evening. But we do have some news on what's happening in California, seismic-wise, weather-wise. After destroying nearly 20,000 acres of land in the San Diego region, firefighters there have finally gained some control over the California wildfires that started Tuesday of last week. Calmer winds that have been a little more calm, have allowed aircraft, including 4 air tankers and 22 military helicopters, to be deployed to fight the flames. And hopefully we'll hear some more good news with that fire being quietened up tomorrow. Now, I say good news because, we hate to see people suffer, and yet if we take a look at our chart from the book of Revelation that shows the seals that relate to Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, which describes the time when the disciples, it describes Jesus Christ's response to the disciples and their question to Jesus Christ, which was, what will be the sign of your second coming and of the end of this age? And the things that Jesus Christ described as he opened up the seals through his servant Herbert W. Armstrong to the rest of his servants who learned these things from Christ's servant Herbert Armstrong, the end-time servant and apostle for these latter days that we now live in, where knowledge has been increased and transportation has been accelerated, where people go to and fro cross country on freeways and around the world on jetcraft. The time that Daniel spoke of, that God told Daniel would be the time when he would unseal this. And he said, just Daniel, who wanted to know what all these things meant as God depicted them in Daniel, to Daniel, God just told Daniel, go your way. You write these things down and go your way. You know, they're not for your time. They're for a time greatly in the future. And that time is our time. Knowledge increased, people going to and fro. And basically these seals, the white horse of deception, Christ said, beware that you don't become deceived. People will come saying that I am Christ and yet deceive many, saying that Christ is Christ. Wars would increase and accelerate into world wars, the first of which we really had just a little more than 100 years ago. That First World War ended 100 years ago in 1914. I think that's when it ended. And then resumed again with round two toward the end of 1930s, and it ended in 1945 in two stages. And the black horse of famine that Jesus Christ described, a scarcity of food. And the fourth seal, the pale horse, who has a rider named Death, alongside whom Hades, hell, the grave, rides, that Jesus Christ described in three Greek terms. The primary term, loimos, meaning pestilence, disease epidemics, the plagues of Egypt. A second term, another major term though, seismus, seismic activity, seismic conditions, commotions in the air such as gale force winds, and commotions on the ground such as earthquakes and the like. And a third term Christ used for this fourth seal, tarake, the Greek word meaning trouble or troubled waters, both literally and figuratively, mobs and seditions, but not the mega trouble that would be the fifth seal, the great tribulation, time of Jacob's trouble, a time so bad that Jesus Christ said that no time since the beginning of the earth has ever been so bad as it will be during the time of Jacob's trouble upcoming during the great tribulation. It'll be the time, as Christ described it, of the affliction of martyr. It'll be of the saints. It'll be a martyrdom of saints, repeated and yet magnified, much greater than any previous martyrdom of saints. It'll be the time of World War III. It'll be the time of a revived Holy Roman Empire ruled over by a newly crowned emperor, or as the Bible puts it, a beast. And the empire he reigns over is a beast-like empire that will require people to bow down before the image of the beast, and who will require people to work on the Sabbath and worship on Sunday. And if not, then become martyrs. But those who do yield to the beast and bow down to its image and work on the Sabbath will receive that beast mark, the mark of the beast, and then they'll subject themselves. Let's put another chart up on the screen for a moment. They'll subject themselves to where's my wider version of this? I think this one here. To the right side of this chart shows the seventh seal, which depicts the day of the Lord, a year-long period of time that is a punishment for those who take the mark of the beast, who bow down and worship the beast image, who work on the Sabbath during the Great Tribulation, which Great Tribulation is during the days of man and Satan still. And once that period is over, there will be heavenly signs, as you can see in the sixth seal. Let me bring that back to a wider version of just the first six seals. There'll be heavenly signs, and we don't have it on this chart, so I'll need to go back again to that wide version so I can point out. You can see in between the sixth and seventh seal, there's a column that says, vertically says, 144,000 sealed. There will be a silence in the heavens for a half hour while the angels go to the four quarters of the earth and seal the 144,000 that are talked about here. And then the angels that held back the four winds during the sealing of the 144,000 will let loose and blow their four winds as they begin the climatic seventh seal, the day of the Lord, and the seven trumpets that are part of the seventh seal. All right, that's just a little look there at what relates to those seals of Revelation. And one last story, friends, I can tell you about here before we go. And I think I was trying to relate that to what's happening a little bit in San Diego with just to mention that the San Diego fires relate to the fourth seal. And once that fourth seal gets much more accelerated, the thing Christ was saying to his disciples is that, like the leaves on a fig tree, once they become ripe, hey, summer is nigh. And once these seals become very full and become ripe, instead of just happening occasionally, once in a while, once they really accelerate and become ripe, like the leaves on a fig tree become ripe, then know that the next major event in prophecy is very near. The fifth seal, the Great Tribulation, will be very, very near. So, if on the one hand you pray, oh God, give those people in San Diego a break, and maybe you've got a good reason. Now, there's a lot of brethren, in San Diego that, hey, you want them protected and safe, and maybe have a chance to get out of there before the thing roars up more or again, or if it's calmed down, then it's just going to be longer before Christ returns and longer before the Great Tribulation hits. But if it accelerates more, but you can ask for your friends and brethren to be protected. That's a good thing to pray. And Christ did ask us in Luke and instruct us in Luke 21, verse 36, to be watching world events and become an active part of world events by praying about them. He said, watch therefore and pray always. With all your heart, be praying about these things you see in world events. And that's what it relates to. It also means watch ourselves and be overcoming, yes, but he was specifically in context, Christ was saying, watch these things I was just telling you about and pray always. And the things he was just telling you about were these four seals, and the fifth seal, and the sixth seal, and the seventh seal. That was his answer to the disciples about what would be the sign of his second coming and the end of this age as we know it, the end of the world as a society, this aeon. And so, there's a little calm break coming in the San Diego winds, but there's other things that will also relate to the fourth seal. The fourth seal with the third seal, the pestilence, the disease epidemics, earthquakes, gale force winds of all kinds, other commotions in the air, commotions in the ground, other trouble, and famine will ultimately wind up in, as prophesied in Ezekiel, in the death of 1/3 of the population of the world. The second seal, war, that will take another 1/3 of the people as Ezekiel described it. Then what happens to the final third? They wind up as a result of the fifth seal being put in captivity first under sword. So the red horse works together with the fifth seal. The second seal and the fifth seal work together. During the fifth seal, 1/3 of the people will be taken captive. Now, not all of them, because Ezekiel said of the hairs that were shaved off his face, a few would escape, but most of them will be taken captive and will die in captivity under the sword during the fifth seal. But a small percentage will live, and after the Battle of Armageddon will live on over into the world tomorrow that Jesus Christ ushers in as a result of the seventh, at the end of the seventh seal. So that's just a little overview of what's coming up, of what's going to be the future headlines in the news, if during the Great Tribulation you're able to see headlines in the news. Hopefully, I won't be here on Nightcast during the Great Tribulation. I mean, hopefully you won't be in any place where necessarily you could watch this either, because God promises, the latter part of verse 36 in Luke 21 says, the promise you're given for doing what he tells you in the first part of Luke 21:36 is, he says, watch you therefore and pray always that, here's the wonderful promise, that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things, and all these things he had just been talking about in Luke 21 were these four seals up here on the screen that precede the Great Tribulation, that you can escape the war of the red horse, the second seal, that you can escape the scarcity of food and famine that results from the third seal, and you can escape the death of that rider named Death who rides that pale horse, who is responsible for loimos, disease epidemics, pestilence, the plagues of Egypt, who's responsible for seismic conditions, commotions in the air, all kind of gale force winds, tornadoes, hurricanes, typhoons, tsunamis, wildfires, and commotions on the ground. Earthquakes, that would also include tsunamis, they're on the ground, volcanic eruptions from the ground, and torake, trouble. But by this time we're going to hit the mega trouble, so the trouble escalates into the fifth seal, the Great Tribulation, the time of Jacob's trouble. Again, a time that's so bad, no time before it has ever been so bad. And thankfully, friends, no time after it ever again will be as bad as what's coming in that fifth seal. Now, let's see, we told you San Diego's got some calmer winds, and they're able to fly their 22 military helicopters and other firefighting, 4 air tankers. They're able to maneuver those much better with some calmer winds. Now, let me end with this story. Again, I don't have any further video, friends, but we've got this story that's happening today. A very interesting story. Prince Harry, out of the UK, is attending events to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, the end of the World War II battle for the monastery at Monte Cassino in southern Italy. He's doing that today. Tens of thousands of Allied troops, many of them British, died in the effort to drive the Germans out of the area and the monastery itself, a monastery that was founded some 1,500 years ago and was almost completely destroyed. In the period after the war, the abbey was magnificently restored on its mountaintop perch, but traces of its wartime destruction can still be found, and Prince Harry is there looking through that in that monastery. And in one of the rooms hidden in a dark corner of the monastery, there are some finds there. In that room there's the last of the rubble from the bombing of Monte Cassino. It's never been shown to the public before, and if we can get the video by tomorrow, you'll be able to see that what's in that room with Alan Johnston, who was granted access to it and did a wonderful video to it. I'll see if we can get that downloaded by tomorrow evening's program. Well, friends, that's all we have for tonight. Thanks for joining me. God willing, and the creek don't rise, and we can get the internet and everything working tomorrow. We'll be back Monday night with the current day's news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. Until next time, your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying, so long, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.